No. Okay, good. Good. There we go. Well, do you want to swing that door shut for me there, Mo? Thanks, man. All right. Well, hello there, and welcome to the Joe Carey Show. Bryan Hyde filling in for Joe today. This was one of those blessed days where not only was the need for show prep completely blown right out of the water. That's a happy day for anybody in broadcast when you wake up and it's like, oh, well, there's a topic that everybody's going to be talking about, and you realize I don't have to go digging for those rare gems of wisdom. Nope, today was the day, and it was today that President Trump offered a presidential pardon to Dwight and Steve Hammond, and that is some pretty big news, in that there are a lot of events that have transpired in the last couple of years related to the plight of the Hammonds. Now, I have Ryan Bundy on the line with me, and Ryan, it's fitting. You should be one of the people we should be talking to today about the presidential pardon of the Hammonds. Tell me, what was your gut reaction when you heard the news?
Well, Harry, I was overjoyed. I was just glad to hear it. It was a long time coming and well overdue, and I'm glad it's taking place.
And did the word spread quickly through your family? I imagine that your telephone probably blew up with people either congratulating you or saying, hey, can I interview you?
Yes, it still is. I'm on the radio right now. And but I heard, first of all, from New York Times called me. That's where I first heard it. So.
Wow. So I'm going to ask you, Ryan, because you were so integral, along with your brother Ammon and others, to the occupation of the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge. Let's walk people who may just be waking up to this now that there's a lot of press covering the Hammonds, and I know the word they like to use to qualify the controversial ranchers, but what was it that was controversial about the Hammond case that led you and others to make a stand and occupy that refuge in order to bring attention to them?
Well, there's several things, but first and foremost, of course, is that the land, according to the Constitution, within an admitted state of the Union, does not belong to the federal government, and the federal government can only own it after, receiving petition to the state legislature and receiving approval, and for the purposes of military bases, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings. And so just the simple control of the land is the first and foremost controversy. But furthermore, you get in, water rights. The Hammonds had many water rights and also range rights. But then the fires themselves, the fires that they accuse the Hammonds of setting and put them in prison for, is a practice that's an age-old practice from the Native Americans right down till present day, where we use those fires to burn off old decadent forage and so forth to improve the range. And so the Hammonds have done nothing to do harm to anyone. In fact, their acts actually improve the range. And so for the government to come in and say, oh, these guys are terrible, criminals for this burn, is just ludicrous. Furthermore, the law that they charged them with, the Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act, and the arsonist charges that they charged them with under that act were put in place after the Oklahoma City bombing, and were put in place to prevent a similar type bombing on, say, federal buildings. And yet now they're trying to apply it to rangeland where, again, nobody was hurt, nobody was present, no intention to do harm. I mean, there just simply was not a crime committed. There just was no crime committed. And then the next controversy is now we're going to put them in prison under this act. We call them terrorists for a little fire out on the range. and put a minimum sentence on them of 5 years. Now, again, the other controversy is that the original federal judge, who should have thrown out the case to begin with, but allowed it to go through, said, hey, such a long sentence, it would be shocking to the conscience. It's just not right. And so he gives them shorter sentences, which they filled, and then the government come back and said, no, we want them to serve longer. We want them to serve, that 5 years. And so now we get into double jeopardy issues where, hey, they've already been charged, they've already been served their time, whether it be right or wrong, it's already taken place. But, oh no, now we're going to hit them again. And then, connected to all that, they fined them $400,000, which they paid, the Hammonds paid, but also they spent over $1 million in their legal defense. And then the government wants them to sign a first right of refusal on their ranch. In other words, if they sell or if they, any of these things, that only the government can buy it. So the whole thing was an effort to get their ranch, as they had done to 100 previous ranchers in that area, to build what they call the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge. So there's lots of controversies in this issue.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about how their plight became the stand that you and others took at the refuge, because I know there's a false narrative out there that says, well, you Bundys are just troublemakers, and that's what you were doing, was making more trouble for this benevolent federal government that would never harm anybody or maliciously prosecute them. What was it that led you and Ammon and the others up to Oregon on behalf of the Hammonds?
Well, really, it come down to that double jeopardy issue, that and the very fact that they were charging him with the terrorism, the anti-terrorism effective death penalty charge. We could see that if the government would get away with this without opposition, that it would become a standard. That now that they would use those same methods to go after others in the future. And we could not let that stand. It just was as wrong as you could possibly be, and we could not let it stand. We had to do something. And we did everything we possibly could do, petitioned our legislatures, petitioned the sheriff, petitioned the congressman, petitioned the county commissioners. We did this through a process of redress and grievances, which is a process, under the First Amendment.
What was the response you got from those elected officials?
Absolute silence. Absolute silence.
Did they offer any justification why? Did they say, did they give you excuses? Our hands are tied, we need that funding, anything at all? Or was it just they didn't dare act, or what? It
was absolute silence. Now, we learned later that they were instructed by the FBI not to respond to us. And so, but that's a terrible atrocity in and of itself, where now we got the federal government interfering with the, process, the constitutional process to, address problems. And here we got the federal, a branch of the federal government interfering with that process. Because, if the elected officials would have been able to address the problems properly, then there would have been no need for the occupation at the wildlife refuge, and there would have been no need for any of this to take place.
Wow.
But no, they wouldn't hear us, and so more extreme measures had to be taken to be able to catch the ear and the eye of the people and the elected officials, which has been effective, because as of today, President Trump has pardoned the Hammonds, I believe, in direct effect of what was been taking place over these last 2 years and that occupation.
Well, and this has to feel, at least to some extent, like a bit of vindication for you and others. Look, the jury in Oregon acquitted you and your brother and 5 other individuals when you were put on trial for that occupation. But the fact is, you were up there on behalf of the Hammonds. Now the Hammonds have received a full presidential pardon. I know if you're consistent with the others who I have heard from today, your first reaction was probably gratitude to God for what happened, but you have to feel a little bit good that finally something closer to justice was starting to occur.
Yes, of course I was grateful. This whole thing, we've been very close to our Father in heaven, very close to God, lots of prayer. We felt that we were inspired to go into the refuge and do what we've done. We've gone through this whole court system, with much prayer and fasting and relying upon the Spirit to guide us in every little thing. And that is why we are free today. And so yes, that gratitude was definitely there. It bothers me that this had to go all the way to the king, so to speak, to gain mercy from the king from justice. That I don't know. I can't believe that we're to that point in America. That this situation should have been handled, and put it this way, the Hammonds should have never been charged to begin with. In fact, if the land was being controlled by the proper authority, which is the state and their people, there would have never been an issue. But it moved from one point to another, to an accusation, to prosecution, to conviction, to jail time, to and then done it all over again, and nowhere along that system was justice had. And now we have to go all the way to the President of the United States and to bother the President with bringing a little bit of justice that should have been done on a very local level. And I'm so glad that he has done it, but I can't believe that we're to the point where we have to beg mercy from the king, so to speak, to obtain it.
No, I'm with you there. And I don't want to sound like I'm a pessimist. I have been hearing rumblings for several weeks about how, well, now President Trump's considering this, which I think is great, but I got to tell you, I never really believed that I would see it, just because the federal government's so entrenched in doing business the way that it is. And even though I think Trump is in many ways challenging business as usual in Washington, this was a really pleasant surprise. And I'll go on record as saying I'm glad it was him in office and not the alternative.
Well, I'm very much glad it was him in office than Hillary. She would have never brought any relief nor justice. And we have been hearing rumblings for 2 years. I mean, he mentioned that he would bring relief to the Western ranchers during his campaign, 2 years ago. And here we are, a year and a half into his term, and we're finally getting it. So, again, it's been a long time coming.
All right. Ryan, I don't know what your time schedule is like. I know you're under a lot of demand. If you can stick around with me for a couple of minutes, I'd love to keep you into the next segment. Is that...
Sure, I can stay.
Okay. And the reason being that I know that we've got a couple of callers that are hoping to join us here. If you'd like to join the conversation, 801-254-1640. 801-254-1640. Let's take Larry in Salt Lake City. Larry, you're on the air with Ryan Bundy.
Yeah, everybody, why the governor
Kristen to check. This doesn't look like the right
Bundy,
templates loaded. We haven't gone to break yet.
And when we went up to the Muir thing, Left Temple come out and says, don't you people go with them, you'll just impede law enforcement. North Temple, Left Temple, I call them Left Temple because they're always on the left. They're never for freedom. But, they were dead set against any support for the Bundys and Hammonds. All right, thanks.
Okay. Well, I don't know if that was a question so much as a statement or a manifesto, but there it was. Ryan, there's still work to be done, and before you and I part company today, let's talk about the quest for justice for some of the defendants in the Bunkerville, Nevada case. I know that there's great concern that these guys who were convicted, the two in particular, Greg Burleson and Todd Engel, thank you. The name escaped me. But these gentlemen were convicted in a jury trial where the jury was only allowed to hear the tiniest fraction of the evidence that they got to hear in your trial. So what can you tell us about the movement right now to to help bring some modicum of justice to those guys who are currently sitting in prison or awaiting sentencing based on a trial that was hardly a fair trial.
And that is correct. It was not a fair trial because the evidences were manipulated, restricted, withheld, etc., etc. In fact, all of those things are what led to the dismissal of our trial. And so these guys that were convicted on a previous trial, there's no way that their conviction can stand because of these same atrocities. Now, Todd Engel is going to be for sentencing, or going to be sentenced on this month on the 19th. Now, sentencing is an opportunity where the defendant has an opportunity to bring forth evidence and so forth that was withheld from the trial, and based upon that could demand a new trial or a dismissal. And so that's the plan right now. Now, Judge Navarro, just a few days ago, about a week ago, come out with a decision on the dismissal, where the government was asking the judge to reconsider her dismissal order against our case. And she come out with a decision denying their request. And it was a very scathing verbiage. I assume you've read it.
I did, and she smacked him right down.
She smacked him right down. So now with what she said in that, and what's coming forth in Todd Engel's sentencing, I believe that she'll have to let Todd go. I believe that she will dismiss the charges, or at least grant a new trial, which then that trial could also be challenged, that can't have a fair trial because of all the same things that were involved in our trial, in our dismissal. And now Greg Burleson, same thing. Some motions have to be brought forth, some paperwork has to be done to satisfy all the demands of the court, but still, I don't believe that there's any way that this can stand, that their convictions can stand.
Okay. Well, it's something that we're going to keep a very close eye on. I know there is an event coming up in Las Vegas this weekend. You are going to be speaking there. I'll be participating as well. And I believe the whole purpose of that event is to help raise awareness and get some momentum building to find justice for these guys. Ryan,
yes.
one other question for you, and I know this is the thing that's hanging on a lot of people's minds. So the Hammonds now have received their pardon. They are going to be returning home. Still, the name Lavoy Finicum hangs in the air, and his name weighs heavy on our hearts. His family has been deprived of a magnificent individual. What are your thoughts about the process to seek accountability in his death, and hopefully some degree of trying to make things right as far as that goes?
Well, Lavoy's killing was flat-out murder. I know that those in law enforcement, the Oregon State Police and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, they want to call it a justified killing, but they attacked us. They attacked us on that road, and they killed Lavoy. If Lavoy had a gun, it was complete self-defense that he was trying to use it. It was not offense. He did not go there and start a fight. He was murdered. Now, as far as accountability for that, I don't know how to make that happen. Because quite frankly, everybody that was there, everybody that was involved with that ambush, are guilty of that murder, or appendages to it.
Being accomplices.
Accomplices, yes.
Now, maybe this is, Ryan, maybe this is something that you can't talk about. If it is, just defer from it then. But it seems to me that in your shoulder is a key piece of evidence as to, for instance, Joseph Astorita. His trial is due to start 2 weeks from today in federal court there in Portland. He's the FBI HRT member who is accused of firing twice at Lavoy and then lying about it. And I'm curious if there's anything going on your part. There's a chunk of metal in your shoulder that could very well shed light on who pulled the trigger when they shouldn't have.
Well, that's true, and I know they're trying to blame a lot of stuff on Astorita, but they're only charging Astorita with lying. They're only charging him with deceit about shooting, not where those bullets landed, or that he's or who or what he was shooting at. And so the bullet that's in my shoulder, may or may not have been from him, or who knows who it was from. And certainly my bullet in the shoulder is evidence that they attempted to murder me and failed to accomplish that. But yeah, it's a key piece of evidence. Now, they haven't got it. It's still in my shoulder. I haven't let them have it because I told them that, hey, if we want to make a murder or attempted murder charge out of this, then I've got the evidence. But if it's just about a case of deceit, well, I'm not willing to let it go for that.
Interesting. Well, I know that there's still miles to go on the road to seeing to justice, but I'm grateful for you and others who are willing to stand up and suffer the things that you have suffered and continue to suffer. I mean, your name is being cussed by a lot of people who are going on either half-truths or outright lies. But I'm grateful that there are individuals with the courage to stand up, and I'm very happy for the development today that should see the Hammonds return safely to their families.
Well, and we're hoping to go there and welcome them home. So my mother spoke with Susie Hammond today, and they said they want us there. So we'd like to go be there and welcome him home. So.
I'm happy to hear that too, because part of the spin that I have heard from a couple of different sources was, well, the Hammonds totally wanted to distance themselves from the Bundys. They didn't want them there in the first place. I understand there was some trepidation or some, maybe they didn't fully understand what you were trying to do, but I also understand that in retrospect, Susie Hammond particularly has expressed a lot of gratitude for both you and Ammon and others who stood up for her family.
Yes, and that trepidation was also coerced upon them because back when we were there in Oregon at the Harney County Resource Center, they were under stress and under pressure from the government, stating that they would go put Dwight and Stephen in prison thoroughly, and that they would be given less desirable prison conditions, and so they were under some pressure, and so because of that pressure, publicly they said that they were against us or didn't want our support, but privately we were still speaking with them and meeting with them, and not me personally, my brother, but we were still there, and we were still on good terms with them, and so it's kind of depends on who you're talking to type of answer on that question. So.
Well, it makes me happy that they want you and your family there to celebrate that homecoming. If you have time, let's take one quick call. We've got about 2 minutes before we go to break. Arthur, welcome. You're on the Joe Carey Show with Ryan Bundy.
Okay, I watched the video of the murder. The one thing that's never talked about is there was kids in the car with the little boy, and what happened? He got out and went towards the troops and to take them away from the kids. That's kind of like what Joseph Smith did, to make sure that his body fell outside the jail, so everybody come out instead of everybody wanted to go in. But he was probably in his heart was trying to protect those kids. And
yes, and I believe
it
was the case. And as far as kids go, it was just Victoria Sharp was she had just barely turned 18, but she was the young one there. Yeah.
Well, they seem to be younger than that, but they're just basically hearing them talk. But it seemed like that they were unaware of it, what they were driving towards. the feds had a helicopter monitoring the whole thing, so there's really good video of the whole thing.
Okay, Arthur, I got to jump in and I got to stop you here because we've got to cut Ryan loose here in just a few moments. Thanks for your comments, Ryan. Is there anything more that you wish to share with our audience before we go our ways today?
Well, just that I'm very grateful for today. I'm very glad to see the Hammonds coming home, and hey, it brings justification to all that's been taking place.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to seeing you this weekend in Vegas, and I hope we'll have more happiness to celebrate here in the near future. Ryan Bundy, thanks for joining us on the Joe Carey Show.
Thank you, Brian. Have a good day.
All right, I'm going to open up the phone lines here. 801